Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the 435 podcast. I'm your host, Robert McFarland. Over the next several episodes, guys, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the 2025 municipal elections. Mayors and city council members from all over Southern Utah are going to be seeking your vote in helping shape the future of our cities. So this is the place that you're going to be able to get one-on-one conversations with all the candidates to help you make the best decision for you come election season. So please make sure you like and subscribe, share it with other voters throughout Washington County, and make sure they have the information they need to make the decisions that are going to be best for us in the county. We hope you enjoy this episode and this series of episodes, guys. We'll see you out there.
From the Blue Form Media Studios, this is the 435 podcast, the pulse of Southern Utah.
Clark Fawcett, thanks for being here, man.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're running for the mayor of Hurricane.
I am.
And tell us a little bit about you and what you've done in the past, what got you to decide to run, and just give us maybe a brief history of just who you are, so for people that don't know who you are.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised in Hurricane. My ancestry goes back to the pioneers that were working on the canal in Hurricane as well, and so they've been there all that time. Raised with my family, then I went off to school at BYU, graduated, came back as a CPA, and worked in St. George for a couple of years as an accounting firm before I went to the city of Hurricane. And I'd already built a home over there, and I took a job as the recorder controller of the city of Hurricane back in 1983.
Oh, wow.
And a few years later, they made me city manager, and I served there for 37 and a half years as city manager in Hurricane.
Whoa.
So after that time,
Did they have a city manager before that?
No. It was 91 when they made me city manager. It's the first one they'd had. So
Yeah.
Anyway, I got to know a lot about the city and get pretty involved. Obviously, got a lot of experience, got training, they paid for and stuff. And when I retired, I felt like that I still was young enough. I should be able to come back and assist I thought maybe people wouldn't want me. I'd been there for so long, but I ran for city council 2 years ago and got the highest number of votes out of it and got elected to city council and been serving there for the last year and a half. So
Okay. So going back, accounting was the first job.
Yes.
So tell me, maybe give me a little history. I'm really fascinated because I know the city of Ivins is considering maybe being in a situation where they would need a city manager as they've continued to grow and dealing with challenges of a growing city. Maybe take me a step back, because I think it's really fascinating to see a city manager and then what the mayor's role is and how that relationship goes. So maybe can you give me some idea of, because one of the questions I've asked all the candidates is about leadership and how they balance, the community leadership role versus the management of a city, because you're a leader of all of the citizens, and then you're actually you're the executive of the management of the city on top of it as the mayor, and those leadership positions a lot of times are difficult to balance between the two. So maybe can you help me understand kind of your perspective on leadership and how you manage those, and maybe help take a step back and say, these are some of those leadership traits that I got from that early city manager role.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Cities most of the time of our size and can't afford and don't have a full-time mayor.
Mm-hmm.
And most of those mayors that come in don't have experience in government. A lot of them have a lot of very different type of experience, a lot of them in business and things such as that. But they hire a professional staff that is able to take care of the day-to-day operations of the city. The mayor and city council function as the policy makers, and the administrator then follows those policies in administering the city. The mayor is just a little bit more unique than that because they are the figurehead everybody looks to and whatever else, and they do have a line authority over the administration to work with them as they go. I felt like as most of the mayors I served with, they were heavily relied upon me to be able to make decisions and go through. I relied upon them when I had questions about things that I thought maybe it would affect the overall city that they should be speaking because they were elected for that position. So I think during that amount of time, I feel like that it's a delegation to the staff for that purpose. And then Hurricane, the city manager, has authority to hire and fire, has certain directions that they can go and things that they want to do. And I feel like as a professional staff, we should rely upon them to be able to do those kind of things. And the mayor is there to always answer questions, to be able to help. They interface a lot with the citizens to be able to get citizens who want to talk to the mayor. They want to find out what's going on, and they seek them a lot of times. But I feel like that the questions and answers should be solved by those staff members. And sometimes the mayor wants to solve some of those issues, and they can. But I feel like it really goes back to the professional staff that you have there. And as the city grows, it's more important. And I know our current mayor has spent 40 to 60 hours a week, working at the city with them and trying to be more involved with that. And that's her style and what she kind of wants to do. I still favor more of a delegation. I don't have to be to every meeting. I don't have to be to everything. I delegate and then get reports back from those people about what's going on. And then I'm able to work with the citizens to be able to educate them and bring them back to the staff to help them solve the problems that they have.
Yeah.
I feel like that delegation is where we're at. And granted, there are problems sometimes that you have staff that don't maybe follow your policies and things that you might have to be able to work more with. But I favor putting it in the hands of the staff, the paid people, the professionals in their jobs, to be able to take care of those responsibilities with an oversight of the mayor to be able to be there and help correct and deal with anything they need to, and work directly with the city council and with a lot of the members of the community.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because there's been a growing, especially at the national stage, a growing concern over the bureaucracy running things versus the elected officials. And a feeling of, when we delegate too much to the bureaucracy, that there's some kind of breakdown in control that the citizens have over how things get executed, or whether policies are being followed and things like that. Do you feel like do you see that as an issue at the local level? Or do you see that mainly because as we get further away from government, right, whether it's state or federal, that feeling of being out of control because you have so many different things, and the bureaucracy grows so exponentially as you get up further in the governmental hierarchy? Do you see? Is it rational to believe, though, at the local level that the bureaucracy is in too much control? Or do you feel like, maybe my question just is it valid to have that concern as a citizen at the local level that bureaucracy has more control than they should?
I think there's always that concern, and I do believe that the federal and state are so much further removed and so many more departments. You can't take the governor or the president and get them out to every department and see everything that's going on. It's a lot easier with the local level to be able to do that. I do believe that there's always a problem, could be a problem with staff and not following policies and things that's there. More often than not, though, what I'd see was the city council would come in and they'd say, well, we don't think we should be doing this or we shouldn't be doing that. And I would look and say, well, that's what's in the ordinance. These employees are following your lead and they're forcing this ordinance you put into place. If you don't enforce it, change the ordinance.
Yeah.
And that's really where it comes back to. Now, there are times when I feel like I've sat down with some of our staff as a city manager, felt like they're being a little harsh. Not necessarily they weren't applying the policy, but it was too brusque. It wasn't inviting. It wasn't encouraging. A developer comes in, they want to do something, and you say, no, you can't do that. Well, that's not the approach. You can say, hey, okay, explain to me kind of what you want to do. Let's take a look at it. Let's sit down. We'll outline the things that you can't do because of standards and policies, but here's a way to be able to do what you want to do. And the workable relationships. I've had to intercede in some of those kind of things, and I think that's what the mayor's role is in a lot of cases. But instead of the mayor trying to solve it, I prefer going back and saying, okay, if they have a problem over here, I'll listen to the citizen. Then I'm going to bring him back and I'm going to sit down with that particular employee, department head, engineer, whoever that's going to be there, and we'll talk about it together and let them solve it. Me just being there to help facilitated.
Yeah, yeah.
And that way I feel like you bring it back to that. I don't favor being to every meeting and everything, but I always feel like that you go around and I'll be to this board or I'll go to this meeting on occasion to be able to see what's going on. And I expect reports back from the people that are assigned. I'm currently assigned on the airport board, but the mayor's there all the time at every meeting. That's like, what good am I doing here?
Yeah.
If she's going to be at every meeting, then there's no reason to assign me. And in some cases, she's taken over and said, okay, I'm going to do this when we have something comes up. And so I don't. And recently something didn't get done and I feel bad. But if she hadn't been there, I'd have taken it. But when she was there and volunteered, I didn't.
Yeah.
So I just feel like that there's some of that needs to be able to be delegated and then allow them to do it. Now, if a person's not doing their job, not working, that's where the mayor steps in and to be able to make sure it's done.
Yeah, and I think this kind of dovetails into kind of the first question I've asked most of the candidates is what is the proper role? Where does the maybe just the mayor position? What's the proper role of the mayor in facilitating city government? You know, what is their job? If we were to just boil down city government, what's their proper role and how should they be operating?
Well, I feel like that they're the chief officer of the city. I know there's been a little question that our current mayor said she was a CEO, and now they got things on signs say, you're not a CEO, you're the mayor, you know. But there is some relationship with that type of a thing. Again, the employees and the professional staff is charged with following the policies and directions that is provided by the city council. And I think the mayor is kind of the extra person there, you know, to see that those things do get done, to provide assistance in answering questions that may be a little bit of a concern, and then taking those things back to clarification as the city council to change or to broaden the ordinances. I expect them to be there more often than the city council will be there, to attend some of the staff meetings and be involved with those, be accessible to those, to get to know the employees and get to know the department heads, to work greatly with them. And again, with the citizens, and they've got to have a pretty good working knowledge of everything that goes on with the city in order to answer. They don't have to answer every question, but they need to be able to know who to find to be able to get that and to associate those people together. So there's a good role for the mayor to be there in the administration and to work as a head. But the mayor by themselves can't make any new direction. They can't make any new policy. They can't change anything that's going on there, because that's the role of the city council, is to pass the ordinances and the policies that's going to go through there. They're there just to help make sure that they're followed. And if there is some problem, policy's not clear, something's not quite right or whatever, then they can help take that back to the city council to clear it up, to get it changed and so they can administer it properly.
Well, maybe even further from a macro position, what do you feel as a view of city government? What is the proper role of government? Those ordinances and policies that are created, where do we draw the line between over legislating the community and maybe having it, you know, too much of a free market, less policies, less regulation? Where do you feel that balance lands at the city government? What is their job in order to facilitate growth and manage resources? Does that make sense? Like what
does,
that general role?
You know, it's very interesting because in this campaign, there's been a lot of discussion about what is the role of the government. Some people in our Meet the Candidates nights are saying, well, how come you're still letting more Mexican restaurants in? We don't need more Mexican restaurants. Get somebody else. One of them said, we just had...
I love tacos. Come on. We can never have too many taco shops.
Then we have a place there. We have a little coffee shop that came on the corner. We have a taco place that came next to it. Now Starbucks is going in. And somebody said, well, you shouldn't let Starbucks in because they're going to push this other one out that's more of a mom and pop type of shop. Well, that's not the city's role. If the zoning is there and the people meet the standards, you can't tell them what they're going to do. That's part of free enterprise. So if you get 3 coffee shops in a row or whatever else, that's their decision to be able to go in. And if they don't make it, not good maybe, but that's free enterprise. That's the way it works. And it should be that way. We shouldn't have any role in trying to decide who's going to come and who's not going to come. Our role goes down to more to zoning. You know, what do we feel like makes a good community and the way it flows? You know, the need for how much apartments, you know, how many residential homes, how many townhomes type of things, looking at the overall general picture and saying, okay, we're going to zone this so we have areas for all of these kinds of things. And that is the way you control the types of things that go into your community, like residential, commercial, and industrial, and trying to place them so that they don't adversely interact with each other. And so in that regards, that's kind of what you're doing. And there's a line where you go through where free enterprise, okay, do you get into that or not? I know some cities that get into a lot of things that I feel like free enterprise should have been involved with. But there are other things it's not. Take, for instance, the swimming pool. When I was a kid, it was a private enterprise. You went and would paid 25 or 50 cents to go swim, and it was somebody owned it. But over the years, the cost of the operation of swimming pools has gone up substantially, where the value people place on it to go to it hasn't.
Right.
So you can't run a swimming pool and make money off of it. So government steps in. If you want a swimming pool in our area with the heat and everything else, you need a swimming pool, the government steps in. They basically, you take whatever money people feel like they can pay to go in it, and then you get the rest of the money from taxes to be able to support it. So, those kind of things happen. But part of my issue is we need to get a better feel for what the citizens want. Not long ago, we had a general obligation bond that we tried to pass for a recreation center. Washington has one, St. George kind of has one, a lot of communities have them. And a lot of people said that's not the function of government. You shouldn't be doing that. In fact, one of my former mayors was very adamant that we don't do that. That's not the function of government. He didn't even want us to go to the vote. And I said, Mayor, that's the public. That's what we look for. Everybody's looking to vote for this. There's people asking us for it. Let's do a vote. If they say no, we got the answer. If they say yes, we got the answer, and we proceed. So I take it a little bit on that kind of a thing. There's areas where I don't feel like we should get into. We shouldn't be operating business. We shouldn't be competing with government in things like that, or to private enterprise with those kind of things. But I do believe it's the voice of the people that we're looking for. And so I favor getting out more with the people, trying to get that input back and asking the questions about what is it you do want? What is our proper role and where we're going to be? Because I feel like that is established with people to a certain extent. There's extents you don't go to on either side, but if they say yes to something that you feel like you need to do, then you do it. So there's a lot of gray areas, but for the most part, to me, it's up to the voice of the citizens, and we need to do a better job of getting that feel from the citizens back so we can answer those questions.
Yeah. Do you feel like in leading in those decisions, there's a requirement for consistency, just unwavering resolve, or in decision making, or is flexibility more important when you're making these leadership decisions? Do you think that consistency has more value, or do you think there's a requirement for a pragmatic, more flexible approach as you come into these things?
Well, that's interesting too, because I've always been a person I feel like common sense makes the decisions. And I've prided myself on that. And a lot of people tell me that I got a lot of common sense in the decisions I make. Sometimes that means you have to go outside of the policy or have a little bit of flexibility. But you have to be careful, because if you do go outside of that, you're not consistent. And consistency is important, because you can't just pick and choose. Okay, this guy I know, so I'm going to let him do this, but this one I don't. I'm not going to let him do this. So when you start getting into that flexibility, you have to be able to say, okay, this is an unusual circumstance. This doesn't really fit the norm. So we're going to do this, but if somebody else comes along with those same circumstance, we're going to be consistent with that.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes down to me. You've got to be able to look at it and say, is there something we can carve out? Maybe you got to change the ordinance just a little bit to do something, because this regulation doesn't really fit this, and it actually is harmful. We'd rather have it this way. So you do have to have a little bit of flexibility and willing to be able to change things and to open it up a little bit, but you have to be consistent. If somebody else comes into the same issue, yeah, you got to let them do it.
Yeah,
so.
It seems like we've faced a lot of challenging situations at the local side, state side, within politics, to where we keep dealing with things like we've never seen before. Things pop up that we've never seen before. And as hurricanes grown, and you've seen it, I think firsthand, probably better than most. Have there been times where that consistency in leadership has held back the city, or times where we've seen we've been overly flexible and bent things a little bit because of the fervor? I would probably say between 2020 and 2022, you had this explosion, and I think everybody's very aware of how much hurricane has changed in just such a rapidly short amount of time, probably more so than anywhere else. Have you seen where that leadership approaches have broken down, and where do you feel like they're at right now?
Well, I do. I've seen both sides of that. I remember a number of developments, and a lot of it was earlier on. Hurricane hadn't grown much when they first started, and so the council was anxious to be able to get development. So when it started to come, they were a lot more lenient. And people would say, well, this is a better approach than what you've got, or you got to do this, you got to do that. And so we'd say, okay, we'll give you a chance at it. And most of those didn't turn out very well. They were developers who were trying to get what they wanted, and the issue for the citizens that were in there later was not positive.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to be a little bit careful with that. And so you don't
any examples?
Well, yeah, private roads in developments.
Okay.
We didn't have any gated communities. But we had a lot of them that wanted to do private roads.
Mm-hmm.
They said, oh, yeah, the citizens like this. It's more quiet. It's more, whatever. And then you get into it, the developer's gone, and these citizens are paying to pave their own roads. And they come back to us and go, this is double taxation. You're collecting our taxes and fixing everybody else's road, but you're not fixing ours.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's true. It is. You've got to be able to look at it now and say, okay, where's the problem? In most cases, we're able to take over those roads, but some of them weren't to standards. We got to where now we have them that if they want to do a private road, which we discourage, they have to be at city standards. So down the road, if that change wants to be made, we can just step in and take them over, and they don't have to try to bring them up to standards. So that's one of the issues that we faced a lot with it. But the other thing is you see a lot of businesses. I got a daughter who works for a dental office, and it was a privately owned, one individual dentist running the office, and she worked with him for years. And then he retired, and he sold over to corporation. Now the corporation comes in and they have policies. They don't have that flexibility anymore. The corporation tells them what to do, and they can't make those decisions at the local level. And it's very confining to those people who have the ability to interact a little bit better with it. And so I feel like that's what sometimes we see is this is the policy. This is that, as I mentioned earlier, you get sitting down with the engineer and they're going, you can't do that. You can't do this. Well, let's look at what you want to do, and let's look if there is some reason to be able to do something a little bit different with it. We can't just completely sit down on the policy and say, absolutely, that's not going to be the case. And there's always a place where you put a policy together and it has unintended consequences. You fix the problem, you feel pretty good about what you did, but you didn't realize it was going to affect something else. So you need to be able to look at those things. And so it's just that hard, fast, this is the rule. I want to always look at it and say, is there a better way? Is there something else we need to do? I think we're in pretty good shape right now. I mean, there's always policies that need to be changed as far as the city goes. I feel like we've got a good city council, people with expertise and experience that are willing to listen and to take that into account. So I feel like we're in pretty good shape with where we're at, but that's one of those things you need to constantly look at. You can't put ordinances together and say, we're done.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, there's always changes. There's new things coming up. Every day there's something else you haven't dealt with before, and you have to look at it and decide, how do we want to do this, and how's it going to affect our community?
Yeah, I think it's super challenging to do, and I think having a history of seeing things that have gone wrong carry a lot of value in being able to lead down the road. How do you view the relationship between local government and the higher levels of government?
Well, that gets a little tricky.
It's tricky in hurricane specifically too, because there's some mixed dynamics in there.
It's one of those things for me. I mean, I think we deal pretty good with the cities in our county. They've always been willing to work together, and sometimes you get a little bit sideways, but pretty much we work together, probably as good as any place in the country. And so cities do pretty well, and even the county's not too bad. They don't really make a lot of things affect us. My biggest heartburn is the state.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with development. They want to be able to get affordable housing. So they say, let's put more density in. So let's make higher density which translates into affordable housing. Well, it doesn't, because the developers make more money on the big home with the granite countertops and the tile and all these kind of things.
And the 17-car garages.
Yeah.
And
so you double the density, and all they do is build the same size of home, and they're still expensive, but they get twice the density on that property.
Yeah.
And the state has been really pushing for that. And the state has too many developers in the legislature. And so they're trying to make it easier and easier and easier for developers and push it a lot more under the guise of affordable housing. And I'm not saying they're not trying to do that, but the results are not coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I look at that, I have a heartburn with the state. They keep pushing and taking away the authority of the local people. And who's the best person for you to be able to talk to? You know, you may know some of your city council members or mayors. You might see them on the street. Stop and talk to them. You know, you can go to a city council meeting and you can meet right directly with them. How many people have time to go up to the state legislature and meet with the state?
Or they can only know their one legislator, and
Yeah.
there's a whole house of them up there that
They don't even know, and they can't do anything with them. They might be their one legislature might be right agreeing with them, but by themselves they can't do anything with it. So to me, it's always been the local government is the best one to be able to handle those citizens' concerns and needs. And I feel like at this point some of our authority has been taken away. You know, I feel like if a city, as the citizens as a whole, said, we don't want to grow anymore, we want to shut the door, they ought to be able to decide that. If they want to say, we want growth at we want to help and assist growth and help pay for it, they ought to decide that. Now, there is a property rights issues if you want to completely shut it that I think you have to deal with, and that's probably a right you couldn't completely shut it off and say no. But I feel like that the citizens ought to have the ability to do that, and the state's taken that away. So I just really don't like the overreach of the state. And it's always interesting because they're always complaining about the federal government doing that to them, but they don't see the same thing and don't seem to care that they can do that with the local government. And I feel like that
is there anything specifically that you've seen come down from the state that is there a specific policy maybe that you're kind of directed to? If somebody's not paying attention fully, is certain policies that you've seen is really tying the hands of the city?
Well, right now they put together a kind of we have to have a certain affordable housing plan to be able to put together. And while I don't mind that that's the case, they kind of force you into more density and to do some decisions I don't know that we'd make as a group. And if you don't put them together, they'll withhold your money. Yeah. I mean, that kind of thing is overreach and heavy-handed in doing it. I feel like that's something that they ought to encourage. They ought to provide assistance. They ought to provide programs. They ought to provide direction and policies to write. But when they start saying you do this or else, that to me is too much. And I think there's ways to do it, but I think local government would come up with ways to be able to do that if they just allowed them to do it. Yeah. I mean, I know we need affordable housing. I know there needs to be places to do it. I've talked about it. I've actually even put a ordinance together that I've given to our attorney to be able to present to our council. But even since I've given it to him, I've second guessed a little bit because I don't like more policy. I don't like more regulation. And basically in this one, it would require 15% affordable housing in every subdivision that went in. And in order to offset that, I said, okay, if they put in one lot of affordable housing, I will give them an extra lot, a bonus lot for that particular case. But I'm still requiring it. So I've second guessed saying, well, maybe I better go back and say, we'll be willing to give you a bonus lot for every lot of affordable housing without the requirement to allow the developers to say, hey, I can build this smaller one. I may not make as much money, but I'll get money on that one. Plus, I'll get a second lot over here at my regular price. Mm-hmm. And I think if we can incentivize them, then maybe that's a better way than putting the forced nature in it. But I think somewhere along the line, we need to get them thinking, and we need to decide what that value is based off of some federal standard or whatever on so much percentage of poverty level or whatever. That house price has got to be $300,000 or whatever it's going to be, $350,000, whatever it's going to be. And that's the level we got to be able to put it in. But we probably ought to encourage them by giving them incentives rather than by saying, do this or else.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so complicated. And I want to run down this as a real estate agent and an advocate and knowing the need. I mean, you look at every survey across the country, every city in America is dealing with one of the top 3 issues, if not the number 1 issue for most of the polls out there, is dealing with affordable housing. And if you look at what is affordability, the 3 functions that make up affordable housing and what makes a home affordable is the median income of the area, the median price of the home. So what is the price of that home in that community? What's the market value of the median home? And then what is the interest rate?
Yeah.
And those are the 3 levers that either create affordability or create unaffordability. And increasing supply is not in any of those 3 pieces, right? And so the pressure to just increase supply, or as you say, create an affordable lot, the reality is it might be affordable on the front end, but immediately upon sales, it becomes back into the market value and falls right back into that median value of the home. And it's still subjected to the interest rate that's out of all of our control.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Governor Cox has pushed to get a lot more lots on the market. He doesn't think there's enough lots on the market. We've got plenty of lots on the market, and putting more on them, like you say, doesn't make any difference. I don't feel like that's a way to be able to get it. We need to be able to get the right kind of ones. You can go build a house and you can put in the granite countertops and the tile floors and all this kind of stuff on a 1,000 square foot home and make it unaffordable. Mm-hmm. You need to be able to have a little bit lesser expensive materials going into that home. Now, I built a home that was under a federally subsidized loan when I first got out of college. And it had linoleum floors and formica countertops and that kind of thing.
Probably an asphalt roof.
Yeah, it does. Still has an asphalt roof. And, a lot of those things lasted for 35 years or so. So it wasn't like they were sub-quality as far as being able to be useful. I've since remodeled and added on to that home. Now I got some granite countertops and some tile floors, and I got some other things that I could afford to be able to do. But they've got to build them cheaper. But when you build them a little less cheaper than that, the margin that developer makes is not as big. So which homes are they going to build? They're going to build the ones that bring them the most money. And so somehow we got to give an incentive to be able to get them to be able to do that. Now I have a son, his wife, and 2 kids lives with me. Makes $55,000 a year. Can't afford a home. His wife is from Honduras. She could probably get a job now. She's got her citizenship and English is getting better, but she stayed at home with the kids and whatever. I recognize that particular issue, and we need to be able to try to do something to be able to do that. And that's not an uncommon circumstance, with people trying to get an affordable residence for them. And you're right, interest rates and everything else have effect. When I built my home in 1982, the interest rate was 15.5%. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, the house was cheap enough that you could go ahead and do that. Mm-hmm. But could you imagine 15.5% today? So that was an issue we had to work around back then. And they had federally subsidized loans where I only paid half the interest. And as I increased my wage, they increased the interest to where it came up to the market rate. And of course, it dropped considerably after that and got so low that I didn't ever think it'd get that low again.
It got too low.
Yeah, and it did. And so that was
which is what caused the unaffordability, because the home values went up when the interest rates were so low that now the average individual primary home buyer was outcompeted against with investors, right? And we had an explosion in our county of short-term rentals and investment properties and things like that.
The short-term rentals have really hurt our affordability.
I think so too.
It was one of those things in Hurricane when we debated that. I was strictly against, not that we could have stopped vacation rentals, but they were allowing them whole home rentals inside the residential areas. Yeah. And that affected the residential areas. And I was severely against it, but they voted 3-2 and it went in. And now they've realized the error of their ways and they no longer allow them, but they've still got a bunch of them that are there. Yeah. But all those homes now are off the market. All the casitas we used to put in that we could rent out for kids that were just getting started or for additional family members and stuff are all vacation rentals because they can make more money out of them. But it severely hurt the market for rentals for the low income and the people that we needed it.
Yeah. And so it's a really complex issue, right? And so I think to your point, and I think a little bit in defense of the state is they're getting pressure from the citizens saying this is the number one issue. We want to see something done, right? And at the same time, I look at it as I know a little bit about a lot of things, and I know more about housing than most things. I would say that the government intervening into this oftentimes, and more often than not, causes more problems than they actually think that they're solving, right?
Yes.
And there's unintended consequences. And so I think there's pressure to do something, and throwing tokens at it in an attempt to solve something a lot of times causes more issues, and it's a difficult situation.
It's a difficult situation for us. We have a piece of property just west of our city office. We need to build a new city office or expand. We need to build a new police station. We were going to build a police station and a city office on there. In order to finance it, we were looking at, and we had some consultants that came back and said, if you put the strip into commercial and lease the commercial, so the city gets the lease revenue off the land, the people, somebody else builds it and runs it. And then they put in there 3 60-unit buildings, so there's 180 units in, I don't even know what the acreage was, 4 or 5 acres or whatever. It's more dense than any zoning we have, and you lease that out too, all to be able to put money in so that would pay for these structures to go in. Well, obviously the citizens were just up in irate, and none of the council wanted that kind of a density. But we do have another piece out there. We'd like to be able to put in some smaller rentals. We just put a 4,000 square foot zone in, restricted the size of home that you could put on it in an effort to try and entice somebody to come in and build some smaller homes. Well, the people don't want that. They don't want it there either. And so as we talk about affordable housing, everybody believes in affordable housing, but don't put it next to me.
Yeah, not my backyard, right?
And so that's the hard thing. And so to me, again, I want to be able to get out to the people and say, what is it you want? If you want us to work on affordable housing, let's propose some, and then let us know what you want. But I favor having that affordable housing spread throughout our communities.
Yeah.
You put it all in one place, it becomes a poverty. It's hard. Those people that are struggling, whether they're starting or whether they're struggling with things, need help. You put them all in one place and they don't get it. If you can spread them out throughout the community, you have grandparents, you have people that's got experience, they can help, they can assist, they help raise the level of these people by, you help them with gardening or financing or stuff, your neighbors you work with together, and that kind of thing. You raise the level of those people to where, I always hear, well, don't have apartments because that's the dredges of the earth live in those apartments and whatever. And I want to say, did you live in an apartment?
I lived in.
We all did. I didn't feel like it was the dredges of the earth, but we all had a place for that. We needed to be there. Yes, can you get some of those people that don't take care of things and stuff in there? You can. And it needs to be managed well, but we need that. That's a part of what we do need in our communities.
Yeah, there's a place for that portion of the housing, and a need for that portion of the housing for lots of different reasons, know. So I guess this kind of transitions into a similar, a more existential, maybe a more macro level of thinking along these lines. But how do you choose, or if you had to choose between preserving cultural heritage and the feel of the culture within the city and fostering innovation, economic innovation, progress in the city, which one do you prioritize, and why?
That's a tough question, I feel like these communities need to grow, and you need to try to provide as much as you can. It gets frustrating a little bit. I know they talk about economic development and say, well, that's the way to be able to solve the affordable housing problem because you get higher paying jobs.
Yeah, wages, house value, and interest rates, right? Wages is a big part of that.
That's a big thing. But I noticed during a time when the whole housing was cheaper, we did a lot. That our Gateway Industrial Park put a lot of jobs in there and brought them up. Now they're no longer enough to be able to pay for the housing because the housing shortage came because we kept bringing in more employees, and then of course people moving in and other type of things.
Demand goes up.
So now what we did back then is almost like it wasn't worth anything because those jobs are not high enough to be able to do anything. Now we need to get more. How do we not just keep repeating that same issue over with? Again, now there could be some ingenuity. I do like the thoughts of looking outside the box and being able to get stuff. But I think the people that came to Hurricane to live, and the majority of what we hear from the people is the open field, the agricultural lot property that's still there, the heritage you feel, it's the people and how you interact with them and how they feel. And I feel like I want to be able to keep that small town feeling even if you grow, and that's tough. One of the ways to be able to do that is they still have access to their elected leaders. When they can't see the mayor, when they can't talk to the council member, when they come in, they can't see the city manager. You've lost that.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be out in the community. They need to be seen and be able to be there. And I guess I favor that, and again, I can't say always. This is one of those things you have to look at everything, but that's one of the things I'd like to still be able to keep. And if we got into some innovations and some things that were going to take that away, I wouldn't want to live there anymore. And a lot of the people wouldn't. So that's probably where I'd side on if it was up to me.
Yeah, no, I think that's a thoughtful answer on that. It's a tough balance because that idea of growth and what do those jobs end up creating is unintended consequences, right? And it goes back to that formula of the housing issue. If interest rates hadn't dropped as low as they did, I think housing values wouldn't have gone up as fast as they did. And even though demand, in my mind, demand is almost unpredictable to guess, right? Because we're so attractive to so many different parts of the world at this point now, and so demand is this the basics of supply and demand, right? The balance of those two things, and it's like, well, just increase supply, and then now your demand there'll be an equilibrium, a balance that'll bring prices down if you increase that supply. But if we're supposing that demand is staying stable, then yeah, that makes sense. But if demand has an almost infinite number of options at whatever price is there, we could just keep on building, and demand will still keep on coming in, right?
Yeah.
So it's a tough balance, and innovation looks a lot of different ways too. I think innovation, being a tourism-based economy versus an industrial-based economy or an agricultural-based economy, services, these different types of mixes. Each city is going to start to create their own thing. I look at Washington City and St. George City, and a lot of times it was the ability for St. George City to secure economic development at a more rapid rate than a lot of these other cities, which has allowed for their continued growth and explosion of growth, where just on, you cut down a street and on one side it's Costco and St. George, on the other side it's Washington, and revenue goes in on one city and it doesn't go in on the other. And so it's interesting to see the competition that builds out there, but it's tough. It's tough to do. What is the role of that economic well-being? If we were to dive into it, what do you see the role of economic well-being is on the community, and how does it compare to quality of life and preserving cultural?
Well, obviously there's two components of that, at least. One is the retail and commercial type businesses, and I don't see the city involved in that at all. When it comes to industrial and stuff, City of Hurricanes worked with a number of those and enticed them to come by tax breaks and other types of things to bring them in. And that's great, because if you can bring in a above average job and raise that level and stuff, that's what you want to do. And so actively competing for those and trying to get those in, even though sometimes it felt like they were after a lot and didn't know if it was really worth that much or not, but that's something you can bring in. They're not competing with anybody else locally, and they're exporting their goods to someplace else and bringing dollars back. When it comes to the commercial, it's hard for me to say I want to help this person come in when, you got an Ace Hardware that's been your bread and butter all these years, and they've been all around doing this thing. We never helped them, but you're going to bring somebody else in that's going to compete and run them out of business. That's just not a role for us to be in. So that has to be able to be back and forth. Now, somebody could come up with an idea that's better. Like you said, your innovation, always willing to look at something else that somebody's put together and see if it's viable or not. But it is important for you to be able to have jobs that are higher paying, to be able to bring that level up. It just gets frustrating when you bring the level up and you feel like you're doing real well, and then the housing goes out of control, and now it seemed like it was a waste. And I don't know how you ever get to that. You can't ever say, well, we're done. We did it.
Yeah.
It's always going to be a moving target. So it's something we do need to work at. And I know that there's a number of the candidates that are really interested in economic development, and we probably should be putting a lot more effort into it. We haven't really had an economic development department in our community. We've relied a lot on the county and the state, and when they've had projects or when we knew projects were coming up, we got involved with them and worked to be able to get things in. And some of it involves getting more industrial property, We're about out of industrial property where we're at, a little bit more in Gateway and some in the industrial park and the fairgrounds, but we need some additional industrial property to bring some of those kind of places in and bring the good jobs. But
is that set up in the general plan as you see it? Is there a little bit of forecasting out for some of that stuff?
there is. There's some more that's where Route 7 came in, on the south end of the community. There's an area around in there that's got some more industrial and whatever. A good place where it bees you off on and off the access, which is always a good thing for your industrial to have it make it so that's good, but it's not really got the utilities and things out there to it, so it's not really much viable yet, but it's in the master plan for that. So.
Yeah. Do you see that as a priority, something that you'd like to see push out, or do you feel like it's let it play out as it plays out? And
well, I think it's going to come because we've got developments out there that are trying to get it, but they still don't have the utilities out there. And I don't think the city, without going through some sort of finding some mechanism through grants or other things to be able to do it, has the ability to afford to run all those utilities out to that place yet. So it's going to have to kind of wait a little bit as it grows. But do we miss some things in the meantime? Yeah. So the projects that's coming in or business that want to come that you don't have the ability to compete with. If you don't have a 25 or 30 acre piece of property and they want it, you're not in the competition at all.
Yeah.
And that's what we don't really have right now. So,
I think you kind of already answered this, but this is more, this is a little bit in comparison. So we talked about economic growth, but do you think it's acceptable for local government to prioritize economic growth over environmental protection? And when I say environmental protection, I think a lot of people always they go straight to the tortoise or open space and land. But I think in general, thinking of environment being, air quality, traffic, the general, what does that mean to us as far as like the overall environment? It's water, it's power, the ability to, those utilities in life, right? Food, housing, air quality, those types of things. Do you think it's important? Is it acceptable for the government to prioritize economic development over that environmental protection?
Well, I would consider myself an environmentalist if it didn't have such a bad connotation.
Yeah, fair enough.
I like to see the environment.
Hey, it used to be conservatives were the original environmentalists. I think people forget that.
I like the environment. I don't want to destroy it. I want to do anything that we can to try to preserve it. I love the fact that we have a lot of BLM federal property around us. Some people favor that is to putting it into private ownership and being able to develop it into, additional lots and everything else with it. And I'm kind of one that says, I like to be able to drive a couple miles and be out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Especially when you're getting people complaining about things going on. You get out there and you see nobody around. It's pretty good, quiet and peaceful. And as long as the federal government continues to allow us to go on there and, recreate and do things, I think it's a very big plus for this particular area. So I like the environment and stuff is going to be there. I don't want to see air quality problems. I don't like the traffic that's coming as it is right now. So there's kind of a balance there. Again, I favor the quality of life over development.
Okay.
And that's kind of where I'm at with it. So it depends on how it affects the quality of life. Obviously, if we're going to get into the point where people can't breathe, they can't go outside and that kind of stuff, no, I'm not going to favor development over that. Is there some things where we can kind of mitigate the effect on the environment? Yes. I think that we're over the top too much on environment and some of the issues when it comes to running our pipelines and using our own resources around here. And I think there's enough regulations now we can do it safely without significant harm to the environment. But we've pushed so far, we can't even use the resources we have. So I feel like that's a balance, and we need to look at that and try to mitigate those as much as possible. But if it comes right down to affecting the quality of life, then I'm not for the additional development.
Okay. Yeah. That's how I appreciate that perspective on it. Well, before my last question, before I get to the last question, is there something that you want to leave the voters with? The primaries are coming up. It's next week.
Yep.
I'm sure you got the polls are in. You got the pollsters out there, and you got a beat on what's going to happen with the election. You feel like
I don't get into that as much as
I don't think they have that at the city level.
They don't, and
I think everybody's just No, well, I have no idea how it's going to pan out.
It's interesting. My wife and I have talked about it a bit. You have people coming up to you all the time saying, "I'm sure glad you're running," or people say, "I already voted for you," this kind of stuff. But how many people's that? 300? I mean, whatever.
You were the top vote getter on the city council. Do you feel it's similar to that?
No, not entirely.
Yeah.
Nanette and I probably draw from a lot of the same people.
Mm-hmm.
Her family, and which she has a lot of them in Hurricane, was a big supporter of me.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I'm not going to get those votes right now, and I understand that. They're all good friends, and they're going to be maintained that way. And Nanette and I have a good relationship, and we've worked together well and continue to do so. It's not going to affect our relationship whatsoever, no matter which one of us gets in.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of those people that's there and stuff, and I have a big contingent from the downtown area. But when it comes into Dixie Springs and Sand Hollow and some of the outlying areas, I just don't know as many people out there. I think I've got a good reputation. People appreciate what I did over the years and the good financial direction I gave to the city. I mean, when I first started with the city, I walked in and they had a stack of checks about 4 or 5 inches tall on the desk. And they're all made out. And I said, "Well, how come you're not sending these out?" And they says, "Because we don't have any money." When they'd make a deposit every day, put $10,000 in, they'd go down and count $10,000 of the checks and they'd send them out. The next day would be the same thing. They were in a negative cash flow. They didn't have any money in the bank. They were broke.
Wow.
And it's like, wow, this is tough. Well, bringing my financial management to it, I've got to the point, over the years where we had a good reserve. A rainy day, we were sitting pretty good with things, and we're financially viable.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's something I bring to the city, and people recognize it. And so I have a good following from a lot of those people that's there. I don't expect to get the top number of votes in this particular one. I think Nanette will still get that top number of votes. I expect to go through and make it through the primary. And then it'll be a little bit different because I think there's a kind of an anti-Nanette sentiment out there a little bit.
A little bit of heat out there.
And it's been thrown around a bit, which I don't like the mudslinging. I've been very vocal in it. I've stood up for Nanette because I have people throwing stuff at her, and that's not fair and not right.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that when that goes away, if those two candidates that go out, it's Nanette and I in there, I think a lot of those people are anti-Nanette. It'll matter of how many of those people will switch to me when it comes back in. That's probably the biggest issue of where it's going to be. And I'm comfortable either way. I'm in a no-lose situation. I got 2 more years on the city council.
Yeah.
So if I don't get in, I serve on the city council. I work well with Nanette, and I'm fine.
Yeah.
So to me, it's not really a big consternation or worry about what I'm going to do one way or the other. And I've tried to maintain a fairly decent level. I don't like sending mailings.
Mm-hmm.
I throw them in the trash. I don't like them. I don't like going door to door. I don't want to text people.
They're not going to see a billboard of you up there with your smiling face?
No, I got my regular signs and that's it.
Yep.
I didn't even put an ad in the Peach Days magazine because there's a controversy over it. And I don't like seeing them in there. I want to go to Peach Days and enjoy it and forget about the political parts of it.
Yeah.
And so I refused to put one in there. I'm perfectly fine with the people that did it because that was a policy of the city that would allow them. I just don't feel right about it. So I've tried to stand on principle with those. Some of those decisions may cost me the election. If it does, I'm fine with that. I got to stand on my principle and feel good about where I stand. So that's kind of the way I feel like I am with things. I want to be honest and open with people. I want people to do it. If they want me to be there, I'm an option.
Yeah.
If they don't, I'm happy to serve wherever they want me to serve.
No, I appreciate that.
So,
I like that. I hope I hope we can get this message out to people as well, because a lot of times the best candidate isn't always the one that presents themselves as a politician the best way, and I think it's one of the sad ironies of politics in America and how it's developed over time is that, we have a lot of times the best candidates aren't the loudest one in the room. They're not the most charismatic one in the room, but they have leadership qualities that translate much better into political management. And it's unfortunate, it takes a lot of times it takes this perfect mix of charisma and extrovertedness in order to get to the masses to be able to drive out the vote, and it doesn't always translate to the best candidates, and
Well,
it's tough.
Interesting. 2 years ago, when I ran for city council, I felt like I made some good friends with those people. Some I didn't know. We got along well, and it was a great candidacy. This one has not been that same experience, and I've tried to stay out of the mix on Facebook and all the other stuff with it. I just don't feel like it's right, and there's no reason for me to get in the mix.
Yeah.
But it's kind of soured me.
Yeah.
It really has. I've thought it a number of times. I don't know why I did this and why I should even be here. If this is what it's going to be like, I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
And if anything drives me out of volunteering serving, it's going to be that.
Yeah. I think somebody told me the main, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the main reason you ran is you didn't want to see anybody run unopposed.
Well, that's what
because it was like down to Friday. Nobody else
started with. I mean, I hadn't planned on running against Nanette. I figured one time she said she's only going to be one term, and if I thought that's the case, I'll probably run. When she said no, I'm going to run for it, I've said okay, I'm not going to run. But then Thursday night we had a council meeting, and nobody was on there. Friday I went in, and there was nobody else on there. Unfortunately, I had a temple assignment starting at 2:00.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't go any later than 1:00.
Yeah.
And at 1:00, there was still nobody there.
Yeah,
Had I been able to wait till 4:30, I might not have run.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of what motivated me. I feel like people need a choice. I don't like to see unopposed races.
I know.
I don't care if I got in or not.
We have two.
People need a choice.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And that's why I got in and run. And I think she thought that I was going to pull back out. I went and talked to her before I ran. I don't do anything behind people's back. And I went and talked to her, and we talked. And I think she thought I was going to pull out if there's other people there. And we talked about it. It came up, and I said, yeah, that's a possibility. But I felt like once I put my name in there, it wasn't anymore.
Yeah.
A possibility, yes, it could happen, but I feel like you put your name in, you got to stand behind it. And that's what I did. So.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Okay, my last question. I know Nanette has talked about this, and I'm an advocate. So on the front end, I'm an advocate for term limits. What's your perspective on term limits? Do you think there's a role for it at the city or the state or the federal? Maybe give me what's your analysis on term limits for legislators and things like that?
Well, I'm basically a proponent of term limits. Okay. But I feel like the local level usually controls itself pretty well. I don't see too many people going in that. And part of the reason for that, the reason that people go in there and stay career politicians is because they're getting paid a wage. It's a job. Mm-hmm. And they're there getting a wage. And as long as they're getting a full wage and everything and benefits that are great, who's going to want to give it up?
Right.
And that's where I feel like it is. When you're on the local level, you're volunteering more time than you're getting paid for.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I don't see that really happening. In my 40 years now since I've been associated with the government, we had one council member that went 4 terms. But other than that, there's been no more than 3.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people didn't get reelected because the people voted them out.
Yeah.
They didn't like what they did. I think that balance is pretty well there just for the voters to be able to see, because they can see what's happening more at the local level.
Yeah.
You don't always go in and investigate your federal people, and you recognize a name and you vote for them, know, and away you go. So I think on the federal and state level, it's more important. I know she tried to put a petition together to try to get it, and I appreciate the fact that she went that way, because if you pass it as a city council, the next city council can just change it. And It's not really going to hold much weight if they don't want to. So I appreciate the fact that she went to there, and there again, had that been gone through and the people voted for that, I want what the people want.
Yeah.
And, I don't intend to spend a long time here. I mean, I'm 69. I'm retired. I don't know how many years I want to keep doing this as far as that goes. If we were talking about 2-term limit, in the thing, and I'm going, okay, I could see me maybe running for city council again in 2 years if I didn't get to be mayor. I don't know if I'd see myself running again for mayor or not, because I'm getting old enough in there. Some will depend on health and my wife's health, probably more than my own in this particular case. But at the same time, as I get to be a certain age, I want to be able to slow down a little bit more and do other things. And so I don't know how long I'll be in there. So 2 terms would be more than enough for me. And the way we're writing it, if I had 2 terms as city council and 1 term at mayor, or I had 1 term at city council and 2 terms at mayor, I would have been able to do it under the ordinance yet. So it doesn't affect me at all.
Yeah.
It really doesn't have any effect on me. Will there be a time when that needs to happen? As the cities get bigger, sometimes they got full-time mayors, they got full-time people. Yes. As it gets to that, I think it's more important because that's when you get that in. Otherwise, people are doing it out of love for their community and wanting to serve.
Yeah.
And as long as the people are doing that, I don't worry about it because they're probably still going to be good in there and deal with it. When they're trying to protect their job, then they're no longer any good. And so, if you want to protect we get $1,000 a month, as a city council member. If I want to protect $1,000 a month, I probably spend enough time with it. I could make more than $1,000 a month doing other things.
Oh yeah.
Easily enough with a lot less hassle.
Oh yeah.
So I don't see us having a real issue with term limits
good
on the local level. But that could change. As you get places like Salt Lake that have full-time mayors and other type of things, and yeah, I think that may be an issue. I've always favored the the ones we had early in the nation where they volunteered their time and went back in their employment.
Yep.
They did it out of love, out of wanting to serve.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the people who run have that intention.
To start.
Yeah. And they get there, they do pretty good, but it's not a pretty good gig. They think they're doing pretty well with things and they keep trying, but then it's their job. I mean, if I'd have been a city manager and had to be elected every 4 years, I'd have been trying to make sure my job is taken care of because I want to be out of a job and have to go look.
Right.
And I think that's what drives most of the problems of the career politicians. But again, if the citizens of Hurricane had taken a vote on that and they said we want those term limits, yeah. Had we voted on it as a city council on that, which she tried to come back and actually have us do, my answer was no.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to vote on term limits on there. I didn't feel like it was going to solve much because the city council one is just get unvoted anyway. But at the same time, I was in favor. Probably if it had gone to election, I probably voted no. But at the same time, if the citizens voted that, I'm happy with it. I want what they want.
Yeah. Okay. That's helpful. I hadn't really thought about at the city level too, is seeing, without looking at the history and saying how many really stay in. I think mayors a lot of times serve for really long periods of time, more so than the city council members.
They do. I felt kind of bad at one time when I started with the city. The first 5 or 6 mayors I had were one term. I thought it was a bit jinx to them or whatever. And we had Carl Brooks and MacArthur. Dan MacArthur, been in for forever. I'm thinking, man, I've gone through 5 mayors and they still had 2,
Yeah.
Then we had Tom, who was 3 terms, and then John, it was 2. Again, we haven't had that long of terms on mayors. And so
in general,
I felt pretty good about what we had with those. And the others some of them ran and didn't get reelected. That was the term limits. People, they did some good things, but they ruffled some feathers.
Yeah.
And that's what got them voted out. So again, I think there's a time coming when that would be important, and I'd like to be able to feel like we do it. I just don't think it's necessary right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's super important at the state and federal levels that we really, and the reason I ask the question, not necessarily that I believe that the local city is in need of that, but, how do you start to build momentum into requiring that these state and federal officials can feel the pressure as to the citizens wanting these things? And I think it could have systematically it could have the biggest impact on getting us out of issues. Incumbents win 80% of the time.
Yeah.
And so that incentive for lobbyists and interest groups to slowly chip away at these politicians the longer they're in, it really causes issues. And I think if the citizens really stood up, I think on the whole, most people believe, especially at the state and federal level, that we should have some kind of limit in there, but we're never going to see them do it on their own. We're going to have to really push it and demand it.
Yeah. And they get more comfortable as they get in and they get to know the system. They kind of feel like they're in there, and they do have again, you don't know those people very well. You don't know their voting records. Only the people that are really diligent know those kind of things.
Yeah, it's tough to follow.
So
and I pride myself on trying to follow it, and it's tough for me.
You check the box with the person you know. The other person, you have no idea.
Yeah.
And I tried with my wife and my daughter and son that are around there. We try to sit down on any ballot. We go through and investigate. We talk about the issues, what we know about the people and the propositions and stuff on there. We have a good discussion, and then we all vote.
Yeah.
We don't all say we're going to do this one, this one, this one. I'm sure we vote quite similar because we have similar views, but we have that discussion. I think it's important to go through that and decide if you want to do it. But it doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, not all the time. All right. Where can people find more information about you, though?
Well, I've got a Google Docs page, and I've got a link to it with a QR code, but it's in my literature and stuff with it there. I tried to get the link and put it out.
If you send it to me, I'll put it in the description.
Because I've got about 6 or 7 pages of stuff that I've done. And even since we've started this election campaign, I've added a few things to it when people have asked me questions, trying to state my views. And I have strong opinions on some things. And some things I may not change, but I'm always willing to listen.
Yeah.
Some values I'm not going to change on.
Yeah.
But a lot of things I recognize there are people in our community that have answers I've never even thought of.
Yeah.
And I recognize that I feel like I'm pretty smart. I've had a lot of experience, but that doesn't make me the best. I want people to share things with me. If they have things in my views, one of the people came up to me at one of the first Meet the Candidates tonight, and they had that thing. She said, I really appreciate that I have that out there because I don't see that from anybody else. It's all out there for me. But he said, I don't agree with everything in your item. I said, well, the only way you'd agree with what was in there if you were the one running.
Yeah.
That's the only way you're going to do it. It's healthy to have other views.
Yeah.
And if they want to say, well, I don't really agree with you on this particular issue, they just got to come and talk to me.
Let's talk about it.
If they have an idea that they like, things it's going to do, it may be a great idea that will work. I never thought of.
Yeah.
Give me that chance. We'll talk about it. I'm willing to listen. We could change my view on how I'm going to do it. But this is where I stand currently. But I'll get you that QR code, and I can go and look that up. And
I'll post that on our Vote STG website as well.
And it has my phone number and email address and stuff. I'm welcome to have people call me and email me, whatever. I've had a number of them that have, and I've responded to everybody that has so far. So
okay, awesome. Well, thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Good luck.
Okay.
Primaries are coming up, and then hopefully you'll make it in, and you'll have a few more months to keep reaching out to the rest of the city. So,
and I'll do a bit more when it comes into those. Some things I have in mind, but I figured, I'll wait till I get past the primary. First, so.
I like it. Okay. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Make sure you go to votestg.com. You can see all the candidates there. It's itemized by city. You can see Hurricane City, Hurricane, Washington, St. George, Santa Clara, Ivins are all listed there at the bottom of the page, votestg.com. And Clark Fawcett, thanks for being on here, man.
Thank you.
See you out there, everybody. Thanks for listening in. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the social media websites. We love your support. We love the dialogue. We want to continue that going.
Find us at realestate435.com. We'd love to help you find a house here in town or help you get wherever you're going.